Let's go over it
Okay,
again. Yeah. So, no matter how skeptical you are, would you accept that for us to even like to do anything, there has to be existence?
Existence of us.
Just existence.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So that's the first premise. There is existence.
And everything needs to be relative to each other for one to be exist.
Even before we jump to that,
Okay.
just the mere fact that there is existence. So that's premise number one. Premise number two, that there is uniformity, regularity, and stability in nature. And what I meant by this, which is what one Oxford professor uses as an example as well, he had a bottle up, and he said, what's to stop this bottle from randomly exploding, combusting, floating, disappearing?
Yeah, I remember you telling me about
Exactly.
this last time, yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense for us to do science, for us to go home, for us to look around, for us to even watch the news. Otherwise, instead of us having breaking news every hour, there would be breaking news every minute.
Yeah.
Because the Big Bang would have disappeared. This railing that you're leaning against would disappear. Grass would disappear. Everything would disappear. Sometimes trees would come into existence. Sometimes the tree would disappear.
Yeah.
So the mere fact that we have uniformity, regularity, and stability, that much we need to agree on in order to not only do science, but in order to live our life. You
Sure.
agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So premise one was existence. Premise two was the URS. So therefore, there is an existence that explains this uniformity, regularity, and stability of nature. Does that make sense?
Sure. An
Good.
existence of God?
Just existence.
Existence.
Yeah. So far, what we're going to do, we're going to scaffold on this.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So this is what we did last time. So you accepted that there is an existence that is responsible for the uniformity, regularity, and stability of nature. Yeah. So this is a logical syllogism, just a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So now we know that there is an existence. Okay. Cool. Now, if there is water in this bottle, yeah, can I create a watch
From the water?
from water?
No.
No. Can I take out a leaf from this water?
No.
No. Why can't I create a watch from the water inside the bottle?
Well, because the watch needs different parts.
It needs different parts.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying that if you are making something, then you should have those characteristics yourself as well. Yeah. So if it's making a watch, if a watch is emerging, it should have those component parts already in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, would you agree that there is consciousness, there is will, and there is power when you look around?
Consciousness subjectively, like me.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe that, but no, I don't think there is.
You don't believe there is consciousness?
No.
You don't believe that you're conscious,
Well, what does that mean exactly?
self-aware?
Self-aware of myself? Sure.
Yeah,
But
so that's
that's-
consciousness.
yeah.
Bare bones consciousness.
Yeah.
You believe there's power? So if I was to push you, you can hold your own weight and you can push back? Do you believe that
Yeah.
exists?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe there is will, that we have an element of choice with regards to the acts that we do?
Sure.
Okay. So if these are the three components that are in creation, then the existence that we refer to should also have power, should also have consciousness, and should also have will.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now we've established there is an existence. This existence has consciousness, it has power, and it has will. Now, you could be saying, okay, but that could be other things, no problem. Now, here, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Yeah? Let me make the statement first. You cannot have an infinite regress of dependent things. Yeah? So you are dependent on something else, something is dependent on something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually, would you agree that this dependency has to stop somewhere? Otherwise, there will be an infinite regress, and we technically, it doesn't make sense for us to exist.
Well, is there an infinite progress?
Infinite regress.
No, but is there an infinite progress?
Not for the necessary being, yes. For the dependent things, no. Let me illustrate this point. Maybe
Okay.
we're going on a tangent, and maybe
Yeah.
you can bring me back. Like if I am going to throw this bottle at Jabi, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, for me to dash this bottle at his head, yeah, right in the temple, I ask Dawood, can I do it?
Yeah.
Before I do it. And then Dawood has to ask your permission. You have to ask his permission. And we go infinitely. Will I end up throwing this bottle?
No.
So there has to be an end. There has to be somebody who says yes, then they pass the yes on, yes, and they come to me, then I throw it. Agreed?
Yeah.
So likewise, when it comes to dependent things, this is something which is known as a contingency argument, also known within philosophy. There's many different kind of shoots of it, but very simply, you cannot have an infinite regress of dependent things. Otherwise, you and I, we wouldn't be, existing, and we wouldn't be able to converse today. Yeah. So in philosophy, we say, look, infinite regress has to end with something that is necessary. So necessary is something that starts off that chain. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Good. So we've acknowledged and accepted there is an existence. We've given it at least 3 attributes, and we've also acknowledged that it is necessary, i.e. it's the first. Yeah? And itself, it
Couldn't
has
be in
to,
any other way.
Yeah, can't be any other way. And of course, it's existing pre-eternally. Like it can't just pop into existence, otherwise it would be dependent on something else. Yeah? So in philosophy, it's like axiom you have in mathematics.
Yeah.
In order for you to do mathematics, you need to have an axiom.
Yeah.
So in order for there to be creation,
Essentially.
you need to have a necessary being. So this necessary being is the beginning through which others have come. Yeah. So because he is infinite, we are finite. So he chose to create us at a certain time, which indicates that he has will. Because if you are infinite and you've created something in time, then it has to indicate will. And like he said, can't be any other way. The universe, if you can agree that the universe can be any other way, then the universe is dependent.
What do you mean by certain time then?
So time. So if God is infinite. Yeah.
Okay.
The necessary being is infinite. With us, we were created at a moment, isn't it? Because if we're created and we're linked to time, that's the moment. When it comes to the necessary being, he's been there for eternity. There is no beginning point. So time and space don't necessarily affect him.
Okay.
With me so far, yeah?
Sure, but I'm confused because time needs to be relative to something else. If there's nothing before, then what is it exactly?
It depends. Like our understanding is very limited, and it's very reliant upon the current understanding of science that we have. And the current understanding of science that we have tells us that the Big Bang happened, and that was the beginning of time and space.
Yeah.
So before the Big Bang, we don't know.
Yeah.
Scientifically, we don't know. Yeah. What was the nature of the space? What was the nature of time? No problem. However, we can agree philosophically, no matter where the science takes us, there has to be a necessary being. He has these characteristics. Yeah. So, for us, whatever I've described so far, we just label it as God.
Yeah.
So, in the Quran, our pH test for God is He is one, He is everlasting and eternal, He does not beget nor is He begotten, and there is none like Him.
So what you're saying is because we don't know what exactly happened, we're just going to label it as God.
No, we have sufficient indications to pinpoint and say this is God, because there's again will, intent, and all these things.
Even with the Big Bang, bear in mind, Big Bang happened at a specific time. Yeah, what we're saying is the argument that we're making transcends Big Bang. Like it doesn't matter whether you have string theory, M theory, Big Bang, or steady state theory. That's irrelevant because our argument still stands.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That it doesn't matter whether it's Big Bang. It doesn't matter if it's steady state. That doesn't change that there is a necessary being, and that the necessary being has these characteristics. And this is us in relation to the necessary being. Yeah. So, am I good to move on? That now we obviously call that necessary being God. Now you tell me, how do you feel about that? What are you thinking? Go ahead.
Well, I can't really deny it because my knowledge about it is not as good as yours, of course, because you've studied it.
Fair enough.
So I think I need to do a little bit more research to be able to like completely formulate my idea on it. But I do know with religion that I don't think I'll ever believe in a religion, because what you're doing is you base your like beginning ideas on logic, and then the rest is just faith, which is the complete opposite of logic.
No problem. We can discuss
Yeah.
that, and we will discuss that. I'll gladly discuss that with you.
Yeah.
But in order to do anything, sometimes, Nick, what you have to understand is when a person says, I would never believe in this, I would never do that, there's always a reason. And according to my kind of anthropology-based studies, there's always a reason. And that reason won't always be something which is factual or rational. It may sometimes be something which is experiential, or it might even be something that's emotional, that a person's picked up. So what I would say, and I would hope, is stay as open-minded as you can as we go through this. Look,
Sure.
if for example you bring something, I'm willing to reconsider it.
Yeah.
But for you to knock it down without hearing it, I would say don't let anybody decide that for you, Nick. Whether it's society, whether it's your experience, or whether it's your emotions. Keep yourself open to it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's excellent. So, we've got a necessary being. Now, we've given it characteristics. Now, this is what you had an issue with last time, and then we can help him with this, which is how do you then go from God to then human beings, to then books, to then prophets? Yeah? Now, when you look at science, Nick, most of science relies on empiricism. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
However, faith, as Muslims, we don't just rely on empiricism. We'll take empiricism, we'll take philosophy, we'll take rationality, and we'll take ontology. So you see the four with the one.
Yeah.
But then an offshoot of science, you can say induction and all of this, induction, testimony, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So the thing, I guess what I'm trying to say, Nick, is there will always be a level of faith that will be required. Because if you've seen something, then Islamically, according to Islamic theology, it doesn't make sense for it to be called a test. There is no accountability because you've seen it. You've seen me now. For somebody to come to you and say, oh, he doesn't exist, you have to think that that's absurd. It doesn't make sense. Like, I've seen him.
Yeah.
And some say, I'm going to test you now, Nick. Oh, does Zishan exist? Yes or no? So a test is, I'll give you £1,000. You're like, this is the easiest £1,000. He does exist.
Yeah.
Give me the £1,000.
Yeah.
You see, so conceptually, this is it. There's a test, but Nick, rationality and faith is not only something that's asked of religion, it's something that's asked in life as well. Yeah, you getting up in the morning, you have faith that the sun will rise again. Yeah, you getting up in the morning, or you doing science, you have faith that the electrical systems and the wires will continue flowing with electricity because copper continues to conduct electricity.
Well, because it's happened before, so I know that it should happen again.
It should happen again.
Would maybe happen again. I can't prove that it will.
Okay, exactly.
Like if I wake up and my phone is just dead, and I don't know if it will or won't.
Exactly. That's the problem with induction.
Okay.
That's the problem that science has. Yeah, that technically speaking, if you just rely on science, you are going to struggle to prove based upon four things. Number one, science falls prey to the replication crisis.
Yes.
Yeah, you cannot replicate the scientific experiments.
Yeah.
Amgen did this, and there's a biotech firm, and they noticed that only 11% was able to be replicated. So one, you got the replication crisis. The other one, you have induction. Yeah, induction, which we just discussed. Third one is interpretation of results. Like, how am I interpreting this result? Am I using linear or Bayesian probability? Am I using the linear kind of correlation? When you did this at school, all the x's are pointing right direction, so we draw a line of best fit. And lastly, paradigm shifts. Yeah. The point that I'm trying to say is, in order for you and I to do science, we have to accept induction. And induction, you can't prove it using science.
Yeah.
90%, I would say, it went up from before. I said about 85%. It's gone up now. Of
Okay.
science depends on testimony.
Yes. Yes.
Most of the science that you will read or you will hear, it's exactly that. You're hearing or reading from a book, you're hearing from a professor, you're watching a documentary. Yes, that person may be well-known, high level, but you're taking their word for it. Like, I don't know if you've seen this movie called Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah.
Leonardo
Yeah,
DiCaprio.
Yeah.
That guy was brilliant. He would just walk in to a class, and the way he'd convince the other person that he was the teacher was convincing.
Yeah.
So even your teacher technically relies on testimony, and I would even argue, Nick, your mother, being your mother, solely relies on testimony. I'll prove that to you.
Okay.
Have you ever done a DNA test to prove that your mother's your mother?
No.
But you accept it, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Based upon, she said it, testimony, and the people around also agree as well.
And your experience. And that's something also that science doesn't factor in. Experiential engagement in the everyday world, you know. This is something that the anti-positivists, and these are people who are against empiricism, themselves being very scientific themselves, they have problems with the things that you've mentioned, that empiricism or even like all these things have limitations. And you know what is so beautiful? They mirror the human condition so well. Like testimony, it's still a thing, even among scientists who love to be so objective. You know? Sorry for
No, go for it whenever you want.
Yeah.
You want
Sorry.
to say something?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So, point that I'm trying to say, Nick, is for us to just live our life, there is always and there will always be a level of faith, but the thing is, there's two levels of faith. Yeah, and there's different degrees. Just like I can say I have money when I have 1p. You can say you have money when it's £5. You can say you have money and you have £100,000.
Yeah.
We all have money.
Yeah.
I only have 1p.
Yeah.
So even with faith, this is why I said the inference to the best explanation. As a human being, what explanation makes the most rational sense? And that should be a good starting point for us. If we say, look, this is all based upon faith, then technically your whole life will fall apart because you can't take science, you can't take testimony. You're going to go home and you're going to start asking mom for a DNA test. You know, your science.
Well, if I do take a DNA test, how could I trust it?
Exactly. That's a very good point.
It could be contaminated.
Who's telling you the result of the DNA test? And has he been hired
Could
by
they
your
be
mom?
altered? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sure.
So unless you do it yourself. And who's taught you how to do it? Maybe they've taught you, that number is the opposite of the number it should be. So you can't necessarily win. So I see like you're looking around, is this something that's landing? Is this something that you're like, you know what, damn, a lot of the stuff relies on testimony.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Good. So again, it's just going in line with faith. Yeah, we do rely on faith, but some things make more sense than other things, and that's where we have the rational capability. Yeah, like I can make a prediction. You can make a prediction. You're a sensible person, and you come with a few brothers. You're going to leave the park from that direction and not that direction.
Yeah.
I can make that inference to the most rational because I'm thinking he's with a few brothers. Maybe they're going to eat. They're going to have to travel. Going to a park in an hour's time doesn't make sense. Jumping over is irrational. Yeah? Haven't got any indication that they have to go somewhere. So that is the logical way for them to exit the park.
Probability.
Yeah, probability. Yeah. So the inference to the best probability.
Yeah.
Or possibility. So we come to this point. When you see, Nick, every single religion claiming that there is a holy book, every single religion claiming that there is a prophet, whether it's a religion that's coming from nowadays or whether it's a bit, in the past or whether it's someone 1400 years ago or 2000, 3000 years ago, regardless.
Yeah.
So our common sense suggests that they can't all just be picking up something random and just going with it.
Sure.
There has to be some form of truth that we can derive from that. But then the question would be, how would I determine which holy book? Which holy book is correct? Now I'm going to put this to you, Nick, and I'm going to let you lead me now. be my leader.
Okay.
Yeah. So Nick, you tell me, what criteria would you have for a book that you can say this? Okay, this book, for it to be from God, has to have this criteria.
Proof and evidence that stuff in there is correct. Where it came from. And yeah, that's proof and evidence is the big one for me.
Evidence.
Yeah.
Let's break down evidence. What sort of evidence?
Well, like, I need to not be skeptical that it's true, right? That's basically it. I need to know
So
as much as possible for certain that it's
okay.
true.
So what you've said is subjective.
Okay.
Yeah? It's something that I can see to be true, but we need to think objectively. So give me something objectively that anybody that you can tell this criteria to somebody and be like, that's the sort of criteria you need to be looking for. If you get stuck, I can help you out, but I'd rather that it came from you. I
Well,
don't feel pressure.
objectively, I don't really know, like, because everyone subjectively has their own beliefs and ideas of what needs to be in the criteria.
That's actually true.
Yeah, very true, very true.
But what do you think about this as an objective criteria?
Sure.
If somebody is claiming that their book is from God, that they have the answers to the universe and everything,
Yeah.
then surely that book can't be changed. There has to be a way that it's preserved. Would you say
Yeah.
that that's a criteria?
Sure.
Okay. What if I was to say to you that out of the Abrahamic faiths and the ancient religions, Islam is the only religion
Yeah.
that makes that claim?
Yeah.
That gives us 1 point, yeah? So we're up by 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So in terms of preservation, you're probably familiar with some of them. If you want, I can go over some of them. It's up to you.
Go over some of
So how the Quran is preserved.
preserved. Go over them.
Okay, I'll just bullet point it.
Sure.
Yeah. So one way it's preserved is manuscript evidence. Yeah, that we can find manuscripts that are dated to the time of the quote-unquote founder, although we don't believe the Prophet Muhammad is the founder. So it's dated to the time of the Prophet, and it's located in an objective place in the world. Not a Muslim country, not under Muslims, objective place. And that is in this country.
Yeah. You told me this last time.
Saudi last
Yeah.
time. Yeah, so that's the manuscript that's in the University of Birmingham. Yeah, dated to the time of the Prophet. Number 1, good, done. Number 2, it's orally. Yeah, so orally, how has it been produced? Yeah, sorry, preserved. And that is through memorization. That Islam is the only, and Muslims are the only ones that make the claim that we memorize the Quran en masse. Approximately, we have 11 million people that have memorized the Quran. You might be thinking, whoa, maybe you're using some Sherlock Holmes mind palace, technique, and you're using all these. No. These are minimum 6-year-old kids that are memorizing the Quran, and that's how the Quran is being preserved. Yeah, in fact, we just finished Ramadan, and in Ramadan, the Quran was recited, and there was a little clip going around of a little kid correcting an imam that was twice his age. So this is I can say something, I'll make a mistake right now, he'd be able to correct me.
Over 1,000 times if there have been 1,000 Ramadans, it has been an ongoing process of engaging with the Quran orally. And that's very powerful. I would
With
say.
regards to other books, they were copied. Mistakes came in, then somebody else copied, and then they copied the mistake and they introduced their own mistakes, and like that. That process is called parablepsis and homoutiliton.
It's like Chinese whispers,
Not Chinese whispers. Those two techniques are, if two lines end with the same word,
Yeah.
sometimes when you're really tired, you skip a line because both of them end with
The same word. Yeah.
So because of that, these are only 2 ways that the Quran has been preserved. Yeah, that we can prove. The third is the chain of narration, but I'll delve into that when I talk about the Prophet, peace be upon him. Yeah, so that's the preservation of the Quran. Number 2, you said, okay, with regards to what it mentions in them. Yeah, so when it comes to what's mentioned in there, now the question that you had when we were on the side was, you were saying in terms of science. Now, as Muslims, we don't believe that the science that's mentioned in the Quran is the science. Because remember, we've just discussed that science by its nature continuously changes. There was a time where, again, in the Quran it mentions that the earth is moving, it's orbiting. But the scientists and the people at that time said, look at you backwards people. You're saying that that the sun is orbiting? It's not orbiting. However, later we came to
The sun is orbiting.
Yeah, the sun is in an orbit. Yes. The sun is actually orbiting the Milky Way galaxy.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's alongside the planets and the moons
its own
and
axis.
comets. Yeah, it has its own orbit. So we didn't know that before. So science would say, that's it, that's fine. People at the time of Isaac Newton, they said, that's it. Bernard, I forgot his name over there as well, the one that Dawkins mentions. Bernard something. He's a philosopher, the atheist philosopher. Probably Bernard something, I don't know. So he
Bernard
said,
Lewis. No, Bernard Lewis is, sorry.
Bernard Russell.
Bernard Russell, of course.
Bernard Russell, yeah. So he said, look, we've discovered everything when it comes to science and physics. Time to move on. That was Newtonian physics. Then Einstein came along with his hair parting and his eccentric look, and he brought relativity, and it threw Newtonian physics out of the water.
Yeah.
And then now they're saying quantum mechanics is ready to throw
It out the water. Yeah.
So the point that I'm trying to say is it's constantly changing. So when we use science, Nick, to measure the Quran, I would say it's unfair. It's unfair. And the reason being it's unfair is because think about it. If the Quran was only filled with facts that you were supposed to find out 1400 years after, what about the people at that time when they don't have electron microscopes and they don't have Hubble telescopes and they don't know what red shift is and all this sort of stuff? How are you going to explain to a Bedouin what red shift is? For him, red shift is when someone cuts him and blood goes in that direction instead of that direction. Do you see?
Yeah.
So it's about practicality as well. So when it comes to preservation of the Quran, when it comes to the rationality behind the Quran, it stands head and shoulders above the rest. Now I'm welcoming you to give me a counter to that with regards to what I've said, so we can kind of solidify this.
Well, you said that you couldn't tell Bedouins like the scientific stuff that happened.
Say that again?
You said with the red shift,
Yes.
it took an example. You couldn't tell them
Yes.
like science.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you can't explain to a Bedouin 1400 years ago what red shift is.
Yeah.
I think I know what point you were going to make. And correct me, I'll try and make it for you. And if I have made it, tell me I've made it. If you haven't, say no.
So I can put it into words.
Yeah, no problem, that's fine. So, some people think that whenever the Quran talks about science, it's unambiguous. This is false. Anytime the Quran talks about science, it is ambiguous. Yeah? Why is it ambiguous? So it can be understood by people of all times. It can be understood by people 1400 years ago, a Bedouin in a village, and it can be understood by a scientific professor that's there with his with his electron microscope looking into the...
So you're saying it can be universally understood?
Yes, because that's a claim that we make as Muslims, that this is something that is universal. It's something that is till the end of time, and it's something that is for everybody. So
and we had this conversation early on, not early on, but many times with loads of people who have like problems with the Quran in particular, that when we say ambiguous, they translate it as unclear. Ambiguous just means many meanings. There's one word that you can interpret in many ways.
Yes,
that's what ambiguous here means.
very good,
It doesn't mean it's not unclear.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the thing. Like some people, and this is where you're talking about the flatness of the earth. This is something that Islam and Christianity, this is where we diverge. Yeah, because Islam doesn't categorically make that statement at all. In fact, one person made the argument about the carpet, but he was using an English translation. If you look at the Arabic word is actually, it's like a spring. Yeah, and the word is when you're wrapping a turban around something. Yeah, so it's actually a circular object that goes around. So a lot of people think they rely on the English translation, but English translation is like baggy. It's like baggy trousers. Like it's not gonna. It tells you roughly I've got two legs, but it doesn't tell me the exact dimension of my
I
legs.
love that.
Sure.
I love that.
Yeah? Come on.
That example
Come
is a
on,
beautiful
dog.
example.
So, in that sense, some people think that the Quran has errors in it, but it's completely wrong because they don't understand. And this is where there's the science that emerges from the Quran, which is called usul, yeah, and also tafsir as well. So usul are principles that are derived, and to understand Islam, we learn usuls and principles. So, does this make sense to you that the Quran is unique in its preservation, in its content, compared to, say, Christianity, whom the New Testament, any educated Christian will not say that it is word for word revealed by God and is preserved?
I would say, yeah, it's the best preserved. Sure.
Okay, great. Now let's go to the Prophet now. Yeah. So you've got Guru Nanak, you've got Vishnu, Krishna, you've got Jesus, you've got all sorts of people. Yeah. Let's deal with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Okay.
Yeah. One way of doing it is evidence. What's the evidence? Well, firstly, where's the grave of Jesus?
I don't know.
Where's the grave of Moses?
Don't know.
Where's the grave of Prophet Muhammad?
I also don't.
Medina. Yeah.
Okay.
Out of all the prophets, the Prophet Muhammad's grave, a Muslim will not only mention where it is, but a Muslim will be able to tell you the color of the dome that's above it. They'll be able to tell you the city. They'll be able to tell you the dynamics.
Yeah.
It's accepted. Yeah, it's in Medina.
Wasn't Jesus a prophet in Islam?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We accept that.
Sure.
But what we're saying is using the same, because you're talking about evidence and skepticism. I'm saying because we accept Jesus because we're told to by the Prophet. Mm-hmm. Because once we verify that the Quran is correct, God is there, the Prophet Muhammad, etc., then we're told certain things, and we accept that solely because of the reliability of the source that came from. Okay. Christians, they will struggle.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a big problem for them. You were going to say something?
Yeah. And also, the whole skepticism, sort of tracing back where that comes from. Nietzsche talks about genealogies of ideas and tracing them. You see, like the skepticism.
He likes Nietzsche.
Do. I can appreciate him too for some of the stuff he talks about. Although I fully agree with him.
But Nietzsche, he did not like Christianity.
Yeah, he was very
Yeah,
staunch,
I don't like it either.
staunch.
Yeah.
But he really liked Islam.
Yeah, and I don't fully agree for the reasons why he did, but yeah, it's true.
He did, and I can show you. It's in the book Antichrist, his book Antichrist, and I've got screenshots to it, and I'll send it to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I had a feeling that I might come across somebody like yourself, so I asked Yusuf. I was like, "Look, send me the things," and he went through it. Because Nietzsche was a big fan of Muslims and Muslim rulership. He was unhappy with the Christians. In fact, he didn't even like Christians challenging Islam because he didn't think that they were bringing anything new to the table.
No.
Yeah.
I also agree with that.
Yeah, but so the skepticism, that it is a direct sort of like you're inheriting basically a mode of thinking that has to do with how a religious class in Europe for a very, very long time behaved, and in fact misbehaved, and the way they were treating their own scientists, Galileo, Francis Bruno, and these Renaissance men who were brutalized by the church because they were inquisitive, So like the skepticism comes really from there, and it's not like many would claim sort of a descent from the Greek skepticism, the Greek philosophers who were indulging in skepticism to arrive to what they believe was truth. It comes more from a place of trauma and pain. And I don't think that you should then apply that to every single religious tradition. Because, and this is very famous, if you look at medieval Islamic Baghdad or other places, the relationship between the scientist and the religious class, they don't agree on everything, but no one is burning at stake, right? No one is burning at stake.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it comes from. So and I always see this to my friends and atheists and Christian, when you approach Islam, you have to kind of like leave that to the side for a moment and entertain and criticize or engage with whatever's in front of you, as to go to this whole skepticism thing that is born out of the Enlightenment period, which is really pretty much a byproduct of the French Revolution and what comes after. I think it would be very important.
Yeah.
It just opens you up, it just opens you up to more possibilities to think and be more elastic when you're thinking,
Sure.
You mentioned Benjamin Russell and things like that. All these people, or even like Nietzsche or Ludwig Feuerbach, they don't even have, and I've heard this before, and I find this very interesting, they don't necessarily have a problem with religion. They have a problem with the philosophy of religion.
Yeah.
Right? They're criticizing the philosophy that comes with religion. So it's not necessarily theology, because a lot of the things that Nietzsche talks about Christianity and the theology, I'm like, you kind of get it wrong here, because you're not really engaging with the theology, you're more engaging with the philosophy. And I think that's sometimes the problem. If you just look plainly at the philosophy or theology in Islam and discuss that, I find it very difficult, because you seem to be very open-minded and sincere. I find it very difficult to disagree with the things that are in there.
So Nick, just like we did with the Quran, let's do the same thought experiment. Most of us love thought experiments. Let's do a thought experiment with the Prophet. Mm-hmm. What's your criteria for you to accept that a person is a prophet? Yeah, what criteria?
Well, they have like a large amount of knowledge, way more than other people on the subject, and are able to teach, effectively.
That's your main criteria, yeah?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So the criteria, can I just dispose of that as well? Yeah, thanks a lot. So one of the criteria that I would say, and again it comes down to preservation. You're seeing a trend now that Islam is the only one that's solving this issue of preservation.
Yeah.
When it comes to preservation, how do you know what Jesus said? And if that was 2,000 years ago, how can you verify that? How can you verify what Moses said 2,000 years ago?
You can't.
How can you verify what the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him said 1,400 years ago?
Because it was preserved.
It was preserved.
Yeah.
How can you say what Nietzsche said? How can you verify that? Because Nietzsche, and I'm using Nietzsche as an example here.
Yeah.
Nietzsche.
You don't move from there to here. You don't move just a bit back here.
Nietzsche, and sorry, and you can carry on. I just wanted to mention this. Nietzsche was forgotten at one point in the European philosophical mind, and there was someone like the name of Kaufmann, who digs up the archival stuff, because Nietzsche became a philosopher for fascism, and the Nazis had hijacked Nietzsche and his sister and whatever what comes after it. But it's someone like Kaufmann. So you see, this idea of preservation, it's very, very at the heart of everything that we engage in. So
It's very difficult to. That's why we've got carbon dating.
Yeah.
You can't take people's word for it. That's why things have to be carbon dated, and even then, you carbon dated that it's of that period, but how do you know what that person's written is the truth?
Yeah.
So that's very difficult to tell. But in Islam, we have something called the chain of transmission. Yeah, and this is something that is unique to Islam. No Christian, no Jew, no Hindu, no Sikh, no Jain, no Scientologist will be able to bring something as Scientology is fairly recent, but any of the classical ancient religions, none of them profess to having something as robust as this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is something similar amongst the Buddhists. It's called Dharma transmission, but it isn't.
It's not. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because
Get off, man.
Spider, yes. I saw Spider-Man recently as well. But if he gets bitten, it's okay. At least he can start saving the world.
Yeah.
But with heroes, we get villains as well. The higher the hero becomes, the higher the villain he needs to combat him as well. So with regards to preservation of hadith, for us to take a narrator, there's so much information that Islam requires for us to take, And there's so much information that's required for us to even accept that narrator that it makes it very improbable for us to deny that.
Yeah.
So we will know obviously the name of the person that's narrated it. We will know their tribe. We will know who they studied with. We will know when they studied. Were they there at that time when they existed? Were they there where they say they were there? Were they there where they said they were there? Yeah?
Yeah.
And how's their memory? Are they a liar? Do they lie? How's their reputation in the community? That's already 7 criteria.
Yeah.
Now, Nick, I'm about to blow your mind, yeah?
Okay.
Okay, you ready, yeah?
Sure.
Okay, no explosives, don't worry. So, now, I can give you a saying of the Prophet, and I can tell you the people in the chain.
Yeah.
I'm going to one step forward. I'll give you what the Prophet said in Arabic, I'll translate it for you, and I'll tell you every single person in that chain. So the Prophet ﷺ said, the nearest meaning, Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. That means a person will be with whom he loves.
Okay.
So if you love somebody, you respect them, you value them, you'll be with them in Jannah, in paradise.
Been stalking that.
Yeah? So, this, thanks Dawood, you're exposing your sin. I know. So, al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. We heard this. Yeah? We heard this from we read it compiled by Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad tells us that he narrated it from Hushaym. Hushaym narrated it from Humayd at-Tawil. Humayd at-Tawil narrated it from Anas ibn Malik. And Anas ibn Malik narrated it from Muhammad.
Yes.
The film was called.
Every single person in this chain, I can tell you their name, I can tell you their father, I can tell you their tribe.
Yeah.
And that's the level. Now you might be thinking, that's impressive.
5. Yeah.
Yeah, 5. I can shorten that. There's one compiler, he calls it the golden chain, when he finds only 3 people in the chain.
Imam Malik's.
Imam Bukhari also calls it his golden chain. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, to the nearest meaning, he told us not to kill women and children. How do we know this? Well, we get this from Imam Malik in his book, the Muwatta. You can check all this out, it's all recorded.
Sure.
Yeah? Imam Malik gets it from Muwatta. He gets it from Nafi. Nafi gets it from Abdullah bin Umar, and Abdullah bin Umar gets it from the Prophet.
Yeah.
That's the three people in that chain. Again, we know there's pages upon pages. In fact, I don't think I'd be wrong if I say there's a book written on Nafi. There's a book written on. There's a book written by Imam Malik. There's a book written on Imam Malik, on Nafi, on Abdullah bin Umar, and of course on the Prophet.
Yeah.
Books, not even name, family, tribe, memory, reputation. No.
And it is the same with the Quran. So we have Mujahid, and then it goes to Ibn Abbas, and it goes again back to the Prophet. You know, one thing that people like to say, it's Imam Bukhari comes 200 years after, not knowing that 100 years, 150 years, 200 years in historical context is nothing. 100 years or 200 years, which means my great grandfather. You know, that's the distance between
200 years is just my great grandfather.
Yeah, it's still in a lifetime of certain individuals, and that I've been looking to recently quite closely. It's extremely fascinating how Islam, early Islam, is so well preserved that we have all the characters who are the building blocks of this religion. And to me, that is a proof why I believe in Islam also. It's just because it's been, like you said, well preserved to such an extent.
I think, Nick, also to add on to that is, the thing is, when it comes to proof and history and evidence, it's something that comes second nature for a Muslim. But I have a coin at home, I was supposed to bring it. Yeah. I got it from Adnan Rashid, he gifted it to me. And that coin is 140 years after the Prophet.
Wow.
And in a month's time, he's going to get me. I don't want to say it because some people might thingy, but I'm yet to get a coin. I'm planning on getting a coin. I've seen his one. I want to have one personally, so I can just whip it out and go, Nick, have a look at this. That is dated at the time of the Prophet. And that's something that Muslims have in their homes. Yeah, that's something that's excavated we have in our homes.
Yeah.
When you go to German museums, they have books on Seerah and Hadith that are dating back hundreds and hundreds of years. And this is something that is unique to Islam. When you're talking evidence, look at the Kaaba. You know the black stone that Muslims go around in Mecca?
Yeah.
That's another evidence of Islam, with carvings on the rock that have been checked and carbon dated. This is something that again is evidence for Islam. So when it comes to evidence, Nick, it's something that Islam is replete with. And the mere fact, I'm going to bring it back to this point, the mere fact that I'm able to stand here and link a chain, the Arabic of what the Prophet said, translate that for you from the native language, because Nick, Arabic is a live language. This is another way that the Quran is preserved. Jesus spoke Aramaic. It's not a live language.
Yeah.
Hebrew, it's there, but it's not a live language.
It was revived.
Yeah, it was revived, and Arabic is in the top 5 most languages spoken on the planet. No other religion can give you but Hinduism, not Sanskrit though. That's what the Vedas written in. Yeah, okay, your different languages, Hindi, all right, cool, you can have that. But what about Sanskrit? Okay, that's where the problem is. Aramaic, okay. Hebrew, okay, that's where the problem is.
Yeah.
Arabic, live language, top 5 in the world. People speak it on the street like it's nothing.
Yeah.
You can go on Google and translate it. Try to get stuff translated in Aramaic. I mean, with all the respect, who cares? No one speaks Aramaic. So stuff like this, Nick, when you put all the evidence together, pile it, you look at Islam, and you have to go like this, you might get whiplash. All the evidence that's piled up, whiplash.
Yeah.
But when you look at other religions, it's not the same. Like, you'll be speaking with Christians as well, and you'll be talking about the New Testament, and they will tell you, Nick, can I call you Nick? They'll say, to get on your side, when you make this point about preservation of the New Testament, they don't accept that. In fact, the academics, how many times you've been here for time, the legitimate from amongst them say, look, we don't say it's preserved, we say the meaning has been passed on for generations. But meaning is open to interpretation.
Yeah.
It's open to biases, and meaning itself is not something that can be verified empirically.
Or contained in the language, contained in grammatical.
Interpretation is subjective.
Precisely. There you go. But and if I want to check it, how do I check the veracity of that? Can I carbon date it? Can I check? No. But can I carbon date the Quran? Yes.
Yeah.
Can I carbon date the tafsirs and the interpretations that came after? Yes. All of them, yes.
Yeah.
That's why, Nick, the question comes again to you. What is it going to take for you to finally accept Islam? Again, it's the thought experiment again.
I don't know, actually. I don't.
That's a very honest answer.
Yeah.
Because you've listened to a lot today, and the only thing I ask of you is the heart, keep it open.
Yeah.
Nietzsche appreciated this. He didn't throw Islam and Muslims with the Christians. And whenever I mention that, you say, I also agree with that.
I do.
Yeah, and that's why, Nick, I want you to adopt this as well and say, don't throw all religions in one container and one box.
Yeah.
I want you to say, I'm sorry, like I've been speaking to you, the Christian, I've been speaking to you, the Hindu, the Sikh, but when it comes to chain of transmission, when it comes to preservation, when it comes to practical rulings, for example, look, Nick, when I even talk about prophecies of the Prophet, I'll give you a prophecy right now, free of charge, no. Prophet, peace be upon him, at his time, he was witnessing the Byzantines losing. The Persians were violating them. abusing them
Yeah.
like it was happy days. A plague broke out amongst the Byzantines. No one in their right mind would say, yeah, these dons are going to be winning now. Now, if you look at anybody, I gave you a book, Forbidden Prophecies, last time.
Yeah.
So in that same book, Forbidden Prophecies, you see whenever the safest way, even these psychics, whenever they want to give like a prophecy or something, they cold read. Yeah, like I can cold read you and give you a prophecy that's tailored to you. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, his prophecy is specific and it can be checked even by non-Muslims. So the Byzantines at that time were losing, they were breaking out and everything. The Prophet, peace be upon him, came along and said, within up to 9 years, the Byzantines are going to beat the Persians. People are like, hang on a minute. The Persians are stronger, bigger, decimating these Byzantines. Who is he to come along and say that, oh, the Byzantines are going to win, and they're going to win within 9 years? Now, you might be thinking, all right, fine, that's probably you Badis and that weird guy there making that noise.
Yeah.
maybe it's just coming amongst you guys. But no, this is a good one. This can be verified through a non-Muslim source dated back to that time called the Chronicles of Theophanes. I mentioned this to you last time as well.
I think,
the Chronicles of Theophanes, which is a non-Muslim that could date back to that time, say yes, the Byzantines and the Persians were in a war, yes, the Byzantines were losing, and yes, the Byzantines did eventually win. And then the Byzantines did actually win. So this is a prophecy that not only is specific, it's time bound, but this is something that is mentioned in the Quran, something which is preserved through chain of narration, and something that's verified by a non-Muslim don called Theophanes. He's written a book called Chronicles. It's chronicled whatever was going on at that time.
Yeah.
Again, Nick, this is something that as Muslims, we will give you loads of these. But when you speak to a Christian,
They can't give you anything.
that is something that you can say, yes, but this is based upon faith. But how do you test this? And I can tell you, you can use empirical methods, carbon dating to check manuscripts. I can tell you that you can check the science of hadith preservation. Check it, no problem. Not hiding anything. I'll come here next time, inshallah, I'll have the coin with me, and you can check where, when it's been minted. Yeah. So these.
Well, with the carbon dating, it's like this similar to the DNA test with my mom. How do you know that it's not altered or something?
Yeah. So the thing is, that's a very good point. But the thing is, look, this is something that what I'm saying is somebody that comes with science. This is something that they'd have to contend with because their criteria is so stringent. When it comes to religion, we're saying apply that stringent criteria to science and you will struggle. We as Muslims, we say, look, we're practical people. Yeah, we know that we need a degree of testimony and stuff like that. But if something goes against something that's in the Quran, which is unambiguous, which can't be interpreted here and there, we take the Quran because the testimony for the Quran, according to the science of the Quran, is stronger than that of science. I mean, which book of science will you say, oh, here is the chain of narrators of the theory of radioactivity from Mary Curie. Oh, this narrator is weak and this. None of that, mate. It's in the book. The book can be misprinted. The book can be printed by somebody else. For example, there was a book, George Orwell, Animal Farm.
Animal Farm, yeah, I read it.
Farm.
Yeah.
What they did was they made a cartoon of Animal Farm.
Yeah.
But then, this is accepted by the CIA. Because the whole Russia business, ironically, was going on then as well, with those days, the Soviet Union, they changed the ending of Animal Farm in the cartoon. They changed it. But in the book, it's different.
What do they change it to in the cartoon?
They changed it to something that was a bit more favorable to the American narrative.
So an adaptation more than one-to-one.
Yeah, exactly. So we see that there is no such thing as chain of narration and stuff like that, because because you shut your mouth, boy.
So you did say that you're an atheist, or you identify as an atheist / agnostic, right?
Yeah.
Well, those of you guys that are watching, I'm not saying.
I would
shut
say
your mouth,
personally,
just a
sort of like,
man.
say if there was a point and you decide to be like, well, okay, look, let me look into this, and actually I'll be like, rah, actually, you know what, like, it kind of does make sense to believe in a God. I think what would it do for you subjectively, right, is that Islam is a religion that encourages you to become the best possible you.
Come on.
It encourages you to be the best possible you in any given circumstance. And I feel like if you look at, the excessive, people like Albert Camus and Franz Kafka, all these like, there's no meaning in life and sort of type of thing. You have to like carve out your own meaning. I feel like you're intelligent enough perhaps to do that. But what about the person who isn't really well educated? How is he going to carve out this purpose in life, right? That's why this Islam is a universal invitation for you to embrace who you are as a person, and further develop you as a human being. And unfortunately, there's been so much bad press about religion. And remember, I was telling you about skepticism and where it actually comes from. There's been loads of bad press about religion. But what religion actually does, or what Islam is claiming to do to you, is that it will direct your focus to a place where you can be more comfortable and your surroundings can be more comfortable, and it changes the surroundings. So I am inviting you to become one of us, so that we can make this world a better place. Because I really like your decorum. I really like the way you behave. You went obnoxious. You're really listening, and you're very inquisitive. So learn more and embrace Islam.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking to me today again.
My pleasure, Nick. My pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Come on.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw you, and any question that you have, I have a feeling you have to go now, yeah?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I got that from your body language. So, Nick, pleasure. Any questions?
Okay,
you have to contact me.
Sure.
And hopefully we'll meet again next time.
Yeah.
And I ask you just to do one thing, and that is when you go home, when you're by yourself, before going to sleep, try to go to bed a bit early, like, I don't know, when you're like totally zoned, just a bit, where you can just sit in bed, and I want you to, any way that possible, raise your hand like that, and say, God, wherever you are, whoever you are, if you're there, guide me. I really need this. Yeah, I've stood in the park with two wonderful brothers, one more wonderful than the other. The other one, bones withering away, eroding in the atmosphere, and say, look, I'm doing what I can from my side. And Nick, I promise you, I put my hand on my heart, so I can verify this. If you're sincere, there's no way. I'm actually not worried.
Yeah.
You will be guided by God, because God does not let the people that want to be guided be unguided. So everything that you've had today, nice little discussion that we've had, now I want you to do something, because we believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
So we're spiritual beings. So now I want you to resonate with that, raise your hand and tap into that energy. Like radio frequency.
Yeah.
When you go to 94.6 or whatever it is, then you get whatever it is. So similarly, I want you to tune in the frequency of God and say, God, I'm tuned in. Help me. That's all I want you to do, mate.
Amen.
Thanks for
appreciate
today.
that, Nick. Thank you for allowing me to be
Yeah,
part
no,
of
of course. It's fine. Yeah. Thanks. Should I put